outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.
Hi everybody, good evening to you and welcome to Teachers Talk Radio. Thank you ever so much for joining us live this evening. We've actually got this evening back-to-back shows from 6 till 10. So if you're tuning in at the start of this, then stay with us. Stay with us all evening. This particular show is a really exciting one for anybody, whether you're a teacher or a student, who is interested in studying in the USA. Because tonight I'm going to be talking to guests, one of which is Phil from USA Study. But also I've got an esteemed panel who all have experience in one way or another, whether that be guiding students through the application process to go and study in the USA, whether that be being in the USA in one particular case, or whether it be on the journey towards being in the USA to study. So we're going to be talking to all of these guests this evening, and a special shout to our sponsor on the show this evening, that is USA Study. So your students, if you're watching this, could study in the USA. So if they are interested, if you are interested in exploring this, and I guess one of the things we're going to talk about this evening as well is what the sort of incentives are, I guess, to study in the USA, why people decide to do it. Why do people choose the USA versus maybe other countries? What is the sort of benefits of studying in the USA? We're going to be discussing all of that as the show goes on this evening. And as I said, I'll be signposting throughout the show, there it is, to visit to usastudy.co.uk. So if you are interested at any point during the show this evening in anything we're talking about, then visit usastudy.co.uk to find out a bit more. Get in touch with Phil, who's one of my guests this evening, and he will guide you through and give you a bit more detail on some of the things we're going to be talking about. Anyways, thank you so much for joining us live on Teachers Talk Radio. This show is obviously for you out there. So if you want to get involved in the conversation, all you have to do is write in the comments. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can just drop us a line in the comments. We will share any questions or comments that are relevant on screen. So if you have a question at any point this evening to any of our panelists, then please give us a shout and let us know. So without further ado, I'm going to bring in the first guest, which is Phil from USA Study. Good evening, Phil. How are you?
Very good indeed. Thank you. And it's a real pleasure to be here. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. And thank you particularly to the other people on the panel who are really helping me out today. I appreciate it.
Fantastic. And Phil, if you want to give a little introduction about yourself, just short introduction to everybody watching about who you are and what you do.
I'm a former head teacher of two schools, one in the northeast and one down in the southwest. And since 2007, I've been helping students that were at my school who had shown an interest in studying in America for sports scholarships. And as I taught high schools in America, in Seattle, Washington, and in Bandera, Texas, they felt that I had some insight into it. I didn't really, but I started to learn very quickly. And over the last 17 years or so, I've worked with many hundreds of students, two of whom are on the panel tonight, and parents as well, and teachers. And again, there's a teacher on the panel, two teachers on the panel, one of whom's a parent of one of the students, and one who's helping students applying to the US. So I'm there as a kind of supporting students, teachers and parents on that journey through considering it as a possibility. Why would they want to do it? What advantages are, what the opportunities are. And when you've got 4,000 universities in the United States, it's a target-rich environment for students to look at. So I work with schools, with students, with parents, with sports coaches. I do academic scholarships, sports scholarships, and students who are applying, purely to do an academic program. And I think we've done about 250 individual students over those 17 years, and we're really very proud of what we've achieved.
That's fantastic. Right. Without further ado, I'm going to bring on our panelists. So we have Sarah, we have Lizzie, we have Hannah, and we have Megan. Good evening to you all. How are you doing? You can all say it in unison, but you might need to all unmute yourselves to do that.
Good evening. Good evening.
Hello. Good evening. Good evening to you.
Good evening.
Fantastic. Right. Well, we've done a bit of an introduction. We'll do introductions as we go. We sort of had a bit of an introduction. I want to ask, and I'll sort of ask Phil this first, and then obviously I'll open it up to other people. Why does anybody want to study in the USA? What is this opportunity? Why is this a more attractive opportunity perhaps than studying in the native country where somebody is already in, or another country altogether? Phil, do you want to start, and then we'll open it up to?
I will. I think there are several reasons. Some are purely esoteric, like broadening your scope in terms of international perspective, meeting people from other cultures, meeting people from completely different cultures, different backgrounds. Others are financial. There are opportunities financially in the United States. My son's current student loan debt is about £67,000 from studying here in the UK. It is possible to leave American university relatively debt-free, if not completely debt-free. So it has that. Also has big opportunities. The two young ladies on the panel today are looking at the sporting opportunities that American universities offer. But I think the big difference is the difference in approach. It's that holistic application, so students can exhibit or everything that makes them such an individual and special person: leadership, community engagement, as well as their academic, sporting, arts-based performances as well. So it's a holistic application. And it's that 4-year liberal arts program, and certainly Hannah will give you an insight into that studying a wide range of subjects as opposed to just one single subject. And the fact that you're in such a huge country with so many opportunities, with 50 different states, 4,000 different universities, and many of them very different from each other. So it's finding the right university, and Hannah, I'm sure, will give some insight into why she chose University of Mount Olive over other options. But I think it is that broad perspective, that international perspective. It's that willingness and determination to follow something as a real passion that certainly Lizzie and Hannah and many other students that I've worked with have, whether it be for sport, music, art, drama, or academics as well.
Brilliant. Sarah and Megan, I'll actually go to you next because you both work in schools. Are you both teachers? I think both of you are, right? Yeah. I wanted to ask you, because Phil sort of outlined there why someone might study in the USA. I wondered maybe you could add to that in terms of the students you're working with. A, why some of those might be interested in this, and B, if you've encountered any sort of worries or anything where they've said, yeah, I'm really interested, and what those sorts of buts have been, if any, and how you sort of approach those conversations.
I'll go.
Yeah, go on, Megan, you go first.
So we have a range of reasons. Some of our international students are now exploring the US because the UK is very expensive for them, or it's getting much more expensive, especially some of our European students who are facing big charges now we've left the EU. Are thinking the US or Canada or Australia. They're all kind of thinking further afield. Like Phil said, lots of us are kind of athletes who are considering playing sport at university. We're a big sailing school, so that's kind of our main factor, although actually the sailing scholarships are fairly limited in the US. And then some of our students, one of our students that Phil and I are working with, he's kind of aiming for the Ivy Leagues, aiming quite high, and it's something he decided not to do in the UK. So he's kind of seen it as a opportunity to apply for a lot more universities, and a lot kind of higher ranking universities, and potentially just Oxford in the UK. And then I guess my final, the thing that students come to me. So I'm dealing with year 12s at the moment. We've got about 15 year 12s who I imagine will get smaller. The cohort will get smaller, and the thing they are worried about is the fees. If they don't, I'm dealing now mainly with athletes or international students, and their nervousness if I don't qualify for any kind of scholarship, how will I pay for it? And most of my students, despite being an independent school, do need that financial support in some way.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, we've got plenty of time, so we will come back to that sort of financial element, obviously, at various points during this discussion. I'm sure Phil can have a say on that as well. We'll talk about scholarships and other things, because I think, Sarah, I'll bring you in, but I thought, Sarah, that just touching on what Megan said there, I would imagine that would be sort of one barrier you might come up against. And I think one interesting point that I think is in the schools I've worked in, and I've mostly worked in UK state schools. In fact, I've never worked in an independent school in the UK. I've worked in private international schools, which is where I teach now. But actually, prior to that, I've always exclusively taught in UK state schools. And in those, there isn't really a sort of, in the ones I've worked in anyway, there hasn't really been a conversation about studying in the USA. It's not really been something that's sort of on the agenda. I don't know whether that's, Sarah, your sort of, I mean, obviously you work in the independent sector, but I'm just wondering sort of, do you see that as part of your school culture, or is this something that you've sort of brought in there?
I definitely think that there are a number of certainly independent schools in the UK where there has been perhaps a steady stream of a couple of students each year looking to the USA. But I think perhaps a number of those schools who are doing that are not huge. Certainly in terms of the school that I teach at, it wasn't a destination that was perhaps focused on maybe. And certainly since Hannah, who's on the call, got her scholarship to the US, there's been a real shift, I think, in not just the students considering it, but also the availability of sort of support and guidance for it. Because I think Hannah showed that she could achieve this place at a university in the US alongside a scholarship in her sport, which provided financial support and funding. And that, I think you sort of almost only need that one student to say, this is what I've done, this is achievable, this is great. And it really galvanizes and shows that it is actually an attainable opportunity. And since then, well, I know that Lizzie is considering it and going through that process now, but we've had students every single year who now, instead of just saying, we're only going to look at domestic universities, lots of them say, actually, I'm really interested in considering the US as a destination. So I think it's very easy to break down the barriers. It's almost you need that person to say, oh, actually, I've done it and it's achievable. And then more students are willing to say, actually, we'd really like to look at this. Because I think there are a lot of barriers, but a lot of them are things that people perceive are in the way. So I don't know how to go about it. It looks like it's really expensive. Where do I find the information? And our curriculum department's amazing, but we've been very much supported by the work that Phil does. And I think that makes it very accessible.
Super. I'll bring Hannah in now. So Hannah, you are currently living in the USA, is that right?
Yeah, I'm here right now.
Brilliant. Well, tell us a little bit from start to finish, if you can, starting from when you were in school, in college, your sort of process and thinking and how you actually went from there to where you are now, in a nutshell.
Well, I mean, I would say I was probably quite late to the process. You need to get recruited for like athletic things quite early on. So it was all a bit of a rush.
There'll be people out there, including me, who literally, I'm out of the loop on this. I didn't attend sort of, personally, I didn't go to an independent school as a kid. So I mean, listen, in the school I was at in the 90s, you might have got a scholarship to I don't know, like I don't know where, but it wouldn't have been the USA. So tell me how you at that point you said recruited. What do you mean by that? How do you get recruited?
Well, it's quite a process. I suppose I always say to people who don't understand, it's kind of like a professional sport. So like, for example, like being here, I have to be at everything. Like as I'm injured at the moment, and you have to be completely committed to it. And you have time periods where you can contact coaches and you can't. So you have to start quite early because they have these huge camps in America for all these different sports where like coaches will go and recruit you from to be on their team. So you only have one team. It's not like England and universities in England where you have like first, second, third teams. You don't have that. You have one big team, and you know they won't have. It's not like you trial for it. They pick you and offer you the chance to come to their school, and they'll contact you and those kind of time periods. So I would say when I was Lizzie's age, I started doing it, which is probably fine. It's totally fine. You can totally do that, but a lot of people here do it a lot earlier on when they're first allowed to contact coaches, which probably is about a year or so before. So kind of
when you're about 14, 15.
No, that's too young. I would say probably like 16. I'm going to go for
16 onwards, yeah. But then, so when you say contact coaches, do you mean that you as the child and maybe with the parent would contact? Let's say you were good at football or good at rugby or good at what's your sport again?
Lacrosse.
Yeah, lacrosse. I had to ask Hannah prior to this how lacrosse even works. So anyway, let's say it was football, right? You were good at football. Let's say you felt you were good at football. Your parents felt you were good at football, and would that then be on the parent and the student? And Phil, feel free to jump in on this as well, because you've got the expertise on this particularly. But Hannah, you can answer it first. Are you saying you went over to the USA to basically pitch yourself as a player to various coaches and then hope that you got picked by one of those coaches?
Pretty much. I kind of emailed them. So a lot of people email coaches and coaches email you, especially if you're like a top kind of recruit in their eyes. So certainly at the top of the D1 level. But I didn't actually go out because it was a sort of COVID time where I was getting recruited. So I sent videos over to them and stuff. But I do know someone right now that has just gone out, and they often get like recruits into schools. So we just call them recruits, and they'll come and practice with us, and they come on like official visits. So they're only allowed one official visit, and they'll like stay with some of our freshman players and then come and train and kind of see what it's like here.
Got you. Okay.
So if I could just amplify that Hannah said. Hannah was, as she said, at the end of the COVID period, which was a bit more challenging. And Sarah's, as you probably may have worked out, is Hannah's mom. And so she was involved in the process as a teacher and as a parent. But Hannah and I spent quite a time looking at different university options, which is what I'm doing now with Lizzie. Lizzie doing lacrosse at the same school obviously that Hannah was at. And so going through that process of narrowing probably 200 universities that have a lacrosse program in an area that Lizzie is interested in, or Hannah was interested in. And then, as Hannah said, approaching those colleges with an email directly to the coach with a video showcasing Hannah's ability on the lacrosse pitch and practicing, and the same with Lizzie. What I'm looking to help Lizzie do is to possibly go to what they call an ID camp in the United States. So she would go to the United States in the summer, take part in a summer camp where coaches from a range of universities would be there coaching the girls, and then offering possibly one or two options to consider their university. But it's very much a direct approach. It's very different to when Megan was talking about the young man that we've been working with. Applying for an academic place is very different. So the lacrosse and the soccer and the football, American football, you approach the college directly. And then you have a conversation with them. When it's academically, you do a little bit like UCAS, which you've just got a much wider scope available to you. But why did you choose Mount Olive, Hannah, if you don't mind me asking you that?
I mean, a lot of it's based on coaches. So I speak to my friends. Well, my freshman year, I spoke to my friends a lot about it, and they just kind of, you know, they've been contacted by other schools and stuff. But it's all about like where you go, the place you go. Like, I chose it because they gave me a good scholarship as well, and I really like the coaches. That was probably my main reason. I really, really did like my coaches, and I thought they were really nice and accommodating of me as well.
Hannah, can I ask?
Can I add to that?
Yeah. Go on.
As mum, you know, in the universities that Hannah was considering, she had sort of narrowed it down to perhaps 20 within the sort of division that she was looking at. And so she sort of was trying to work out from their ability and their sort of performance on the pitch, you know, where she would sit really comfortably. It was very important for Hannah to be not just on the rostrum in terms of being, you know, part of the team, but actually physically playing. So I think there was also that element of matching where she would perform extremely well and get a lot of performance opportunity alongside all other aspects of sort of university life, I suppose.
Got you. So I was just going to ask Hannah in terms of what you mentioned you were injured. I mean, this could happen to anybody. Let's say you go out there and, you know, you don't feel that your performance is great, or you feel you got injured, or you feel that things, you know, you're struggling for whatever reason out there. What happens then?
I mean, my coaches are very good. So if someone is like having a bad day or a bad week, they actually will give them mental health days. So stuff like that. My coaches are really big on it. And I'm not sure about other schools. I have friends at other schools that their coaches may not do that. I don't know, but I certainly, they are really good. Like if I was going to practice, because I mean, we have practice 6 times a week, every week for like 3 hours a day. And that's not including our like weightlifting and film sessions and stuff. And, you know, I think if I turn around to them as an injured player and was like, okay, I really need a break, like they would turn around and be like, yeah, okay, like, because like I'm important, like they value their injured players, like we have different roles on the team, but like they do understand that like sometimes it's just the day is not the day.
Got you. Okay, so let's say you've gone out there, you've picked the college, Hannah, which was Mount Olive. You know, you've had an offer from them presumably, and then you've accepted that offer, and then what happens after that?
Well, you have to sign a national letter of intent to like, so it's quite a process. You verbally accept their offer, and then from then on, you can't talk to any other coaches unless you decommit, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then I got this like big letter that I had to sign, which basically outlines all my scholarship and all the requirements, and I have to sign that as well. So a little bit, it's like a contract, I suppose. And then I just come here and start training with the team. You are kind of thrown in the deep end a little bit, but I really enjoyed it, and everything's paid for as well, like gear wise and stuff. Yeah.
I mean, I'll ask sort of either Phil or Sarah or Megan on this point before I want to know sort of Lizzie's story after that. But I want to just quickly ask you, from the perspective of academic performance, are there mitigations there in terms of, you know, you have to get like you would in a standard university, you have to get a certain amount of grades or certain number of qualifications from an academic standpoint to be able to benefit from getting one of these scholarships or getting selected? You know, are they saying we select you, but it's on condition that you do this, this, and this in your exams?
If I can probably answer that, that certainly up until the pandemic, all National Collegiate Athletic Association, who are the big players in the university sports in the United States. There are others, but the NCAA is the biggest player. And Hannah alluded to Division 1, Division 2, Division 3, which are the kind of divisions of the different sports. There was a requirement that all athletes had to take a standardized assessment test or an American college test to give a baseline academic qualification. Pandemic made that difficult, but certainly when Hannah applied to Mount Olive and when Lizzie applies to the university she's going to apply to, they will have to convince the coach, and the coach will then have to convince the university that they are capable of accessing the academic program. So the SAT, the ACT, Hannah's A-level predictions, Lizzie's GCSE scores and A-level predictions kind of give that coach the weight to say, this is a very talented young lady. I want her on the squad. And by the way, she's a good academic student as well. I'm not going to, hopefully not embarrass Hannah, but I think you got a merit scholarship based on your academic performance without requiring it, or requesting it rather. They gave it as a reward, if you like, for exams well done. I think Hannah did have a bit of a kind of concern over having to do math when she went to university. This is the upside and the downside of the liberal arts education, that you do have to do some courses, core curriculum courses, which the university require of you. But certainly that's a key, because for one season, as Hannah mentioned, and Lizzie will find out, for one season, you are, to all intents and purposes, an unpaid professional athlete, but you're also a full-time student. So not only will Lizzie have to manage a 6-day workload that Hannah's alluded to in her lacrosse, she's also going to have to keep up with her classes and courses as well.
That makes sense. Lizzie, I'll come on to you. Welcome. Tell us something about you then. Tell us what you're doing and what your hopes and aspirations are.
Well, I wanted to go to uni in America because, like Hannah, I'm really passionate about lacrosse, and it's much more well known in America than it is here. And I'm friends with people like Hannah who've just told me how much they love it, and I just want to do something a bit different than just going to university in the UK.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Lizzie, I'm going to let you tell us rather than Hannah, because Hannah already tried to explain this to me and I just switched off after 30 seconds. Can you tell me what lacrosse is?
Yes. Okay.
Out there, and I apologize to Hannah because it wasn't her fault. I just really struggle with the concept. Go on, tell me about it.
It sounds really stupid how I explain it, but it's like a basket on a stick. A basket on the end of the stick, and you like throw a ball around to each other, and you try and throw it in a goal that's quite small, actually. It's quite tricky. That's kind of the whole, that's the simplified version of it. It's very quick.
What's the one where you're on a horse?
Polo.
Polo?
Oh, that's polo. So that's not lacrosse. Is lacrosse just you're literally running around with the stick?
Yeah, we don't have horses.
Got you. But polo's similar though. A concept, right?
It's literally, I would describe lacrosse as like, imagine like playing football. Well, it's literally that, but you have a stick and a much smaller ball. It's probably
in the air.
In some ways, it's more complex, but it's not. But like you're just running around just like you would in football.
That makes sense.
Yeah, the aim is to get the ball from one end of the pitch to the other and score a goal. But you do it by passing it between these nets. It's very small.
A little bit like field hockey in the sky.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I wanted to ask you, Phil, because, and I'll come back to you, Lizzie, because I want to ask you a bit more about why you're choosing and why you've got this aspiration for the USA in particular. But Phil, I wanted to ask you that a lot of our maybe listeners, viewers will work in schools where maybe some of the students don't have a supportive background. They don't have maybe the sort of carer or parent who's sort of helping them, pushing them on, giving them sort of guidance, advice, opening the opportunity doors and all that sort of stuff. And also they may, I mean, we mentioned a bit there about scholarships, but I just want to give you a scenario there that you've got student A, let's call him Adam. Adam does not have sort of anything apart from maybe their teacher, who's their sort of advocate within their school, maybe their subject teacher or their form tutor or whoever it may be. And they don't have sort of any sort of financial background or any sort of capital around them to be able to pursue it. I mean, be honest with me, Phil, is how can we help that? How would you sort of say to the form tutor, let's say, what, and they called you up and said, is this a possibility? What happened?
Certainly, I would say it is a possibility. It is more difficult. It's like anything, you know, for Hannah and Lizzie to be the lacrosse players that they are, need all sorts of things to be in their favour, and supportive parents and supportive schools are two main factors to help them. So it is more difficult, but there is organisations like the Sutton Trust who spend quite a lot of time each year trying to advocate for students who are academically capable of going to the United States or to Canada, but are financially not able to. And certainly, I think the big thing in the American universities, speaking up on their behalf, is their ability to help people financially. And certainly with Hannah and Lizzie, helping them through their sport, but also there are, I think, 112 universities in the United States that will agree to meet all your demonstrated financial need. If you can demonstrate that you need it and they are happy to have you as a student, they will pay. So it is possible to literally get a what the Americans call a free ride. It's not common and it's challenging, but if any student out there was capable of getting to Harvard, Yale, Princeton, MIT, and anyone, Amherst College, you know, some of the best in the world, they will guarantee to meet all the need of the students, irrespective of how many they have to do it. So they will, if they take on 2,000 students who need financial aid, they will pay it. However, as I said, that is unlikely, but there are all sorts of different financial packages available that we mentioned. But I think the most important thing is they need support. It's not something that you can easily do just on your own with Google. So I'm at the process putting together a one-off platform. So for a very small amount of money, a student can access the platform, which will take them through each of the steps that I go through with students to help them get to that end game. So one of the things that Hannah and I are working on is putting together short videos, short fact sheets with links, so that they can basically manage it themselves with a structure that we can provide. But certainly those students who do go to schools, and I work in several state schools now, Whitley Bay High School here in the Northeast where I live, Kirby Kendall, who are slowly but surely encouraging more and more students to consider it. So it is there, but it's still certainly lagging behind. I think Sarah mentioned, and Megan certainly mentioned, that there are a number of schools, and Royal Hospital School in Ipswich will be one that has a number of students each year that are very anxious and keen and committed to looking at it as a possibility. And it's a tribute to Megan and her team that, you know, they're embracing that and taking students on trips to meet colleges and meet representatives, and also Morton Hall where Hannah and Hannah went, Lizzie goes to, and Sarah teaches there. You know, that they are also a very supportive environment, and that is an added benefit. You know, it'd be interesting to see if Lizzie had gone to the local academy here in Prudhoe, whether she would be an international lacrosse player, which she is now. And the answer to that is probably she wouldn't, despite the fact she's still her and still physically and able to do that. She wouldn't have the opportunity. So my job in USA Study is to try and advocate more and more, dip more and more schools, more and more parents, more and more sports teams to encourage people from, shall we say, more disadvantaged backgrounds to consider it as an option.
No, that's brilliant. Megan, I mean, I'll come to you, just sort of touching on what Phil said within your school. So are a lot of students interested in this?
I would say more and more. Our numbers seem to be doubling or tripling. So the last few years, we've sent one student to the US. Last year, we had our kind of biggest success. We sent a student to Yale, a big sailor. This year, we have 3 applying. And from our 12 cohort, as I said, we've got about 15 students interested. How many will go all the way? I don't know. I suspect 5 or 6 will go further. And a real mix of some being athletes and some being students who just want to, you know, study engineering or actually go down the non-liberal arts route. What Phil's kind of opened my eyes to is, I would say, my first experience. I've been in the sixth form team for 7 or 8 years, but leading higher education for 2.5 years, and the student who's gone to Yale was my first kind of major student I supported through the year 12 and 13 process. But what Phil's highlighted to me is the different types of colleges. It's not all about Ivy League, and actually, if you want to play sport at university and that's what you want to do, then and potentially you haven't got the academic profile for an Ivy League, which the student who went last year did, you can change your university, and actually, you know, he knows universities that I've never heard of. You know, as a kind of American TV show fan, I know the Boston ones through Dawson's Creek and things like that, but I haven't heard of them beyond those kind of Ivy Leagues, and Phil's opened my eyes to other colleges, and I imagine we'll work with some of our students as we go through, because he knows far more than I do. You know, I'm learning, and I'm learning small bits every year.
Got you. No, perfect. Right, okay. I mean, we've sort of touched on this, but I think it's a really important point. We're now on 13th of January. So, Phil, I don't know whether you want to come back on this, maybe Sarah as well, but and maybe also Hannah, because Hannah's sort of gone through it. But what's the timeline on this? Because if say, for example, somebody wanted, you know, it might be somebody who's now tentatively sort of considering it, isn't it? And sort of, you know, they might be in let's say they're in year 12. They might be thinking, I don't know, maybe at the end of A level. What are the time frames on it, Phil?
I think certainly as Hannah mentioned, that starting to recruit for sport, it's better to start a little bit earlier, to make sure that you've perfected your sport and you've got that portfolio to back up that application, and you've had chance to approach each university, each coach, each college. The academic program, then literally, if you're in year 12, this time of the year is probably getting towards the last opportunity you have to really do a compelling application. Applications have to be in January. For most universities, the thing with American universities, because of its complexity and its rich diversity, everything I say is right somewhere, nothing's right everywhere. So for an academic student, so the boy that is at Megan's school, he's in year 13. He's done his application. He's sent his application in January to the universities that he's interested in. And interesting, I don't know if he's told you this, Megan, but he's got an interview for Princeton in a couple of weeks' time, which he's really excited about. But the 1st of January is normally the deadline for regular decision applications for students starting in September. Then January of that year 13 is the time to apply. You can apply to one university or early to get get a bit ahead of the game, and that's in November normally. But everything's different. University of California has a completely different system, so that's where people like me come in, because I can help navigate through these different opportunities. But if the boy at Sam, I'm sure you won't mind if we mention his name, Sam, if he gets he will hear from the universities in April, and they will make a decision whether they want to accept him, whether they want to reject him, or whether they want to waitlist him, put him on a kind of holding pattern. So he will know in April which university. So if he's got 2 offers, he can then choose which one he wants to accept. And it's not an offer like often in UCAS where it's A-level grade dependent. It's normally not A-level grade dependent. They've made their decision based on A-level predictions, GCSE scores, recommendations from people like Sarah and Megan, and their own endeavours, you know, on the sports field, in the music room, or in the community engagement. So it is complicated, but essentially starting in year 12, if you're an academic student, is is the best time to do it. End of year 11, once you finish your GCSEs, which is what I recommended to Lizzie, you know, that she made a good start when she'd finished with her GCSEs. But at the moment, she's having to try and wade through treacle to find out the universities that are going to ultimately be the best fit for her academically and sportingly. So it's always a good idea for sports people to start a little bit earlier.
Lizzie, I was going to ask you, you know, are you sort of like scared about the opportunity, so to speak, or because there'll be a lot of kids who are sort of, I don't know, 15, 16, 17, whatever, who really can't imagine sort of going, doing that. I mean, I didn't have my first flight till I was 18 years old. So I hadn't even gone on a plane till I was 18. So there might be sort of kids out there. I mean, how do you view it? Are you viewing this as like, oh, I really want to go for this, and sort of a bit more like carefree, or are you sort of nervous, or where are you with that?
I'm more exciting because I lived in Hong Kong when I was younger.
Okay.
So I just like the idea of, I love going to new places and like meeting new people. So I'm more just excited at the opportunity of trying something new.
Brilliant. No, absolutely. No, it makes perfect sense.
Can I ask you a question, Lizzie?
Yeah.
Are you just doing US, or are you going to do UCAS as well?
I'm just doing US unis.
What did you mean by that question, Megan, in terms of?
Because Sam, who Phil mentioned, he is just doing US, but most of my US students will apply to the UK as well. And something I didn't know until last year is that if a student applies early decision in the US, and they get an offer of early decision, which my student from last year did, you have to pull out the UK. You can't be waiting for UK offers because you've committed to an early decision university in the US, which I thought different countries, they're not linked at all, but they are. So if you're applying, say, to Oxford and to Yale, and you got into Yale before you heard from Oxford, well, you'd have to pull out of the Oxbridge, which was all new to me until last summer.
Interesting, yeah. So you can't sort of use that as a backup option, so to speak. Once you've had an offer, that's it. You're going, sort of thing.
But early decision, that is, right, Phil?
Early decision.
That's right. Yes, there's early decision is what they call binding. It means if you apply early decision and they offer you the place, it is binding, and you have to withdraw all. In the same way that when Hannah committed to University of Mount Olive, she basically had to pull out of any other colleges or universities that were offering her an opportunity. So early decision is binding, and you then have to cancel all your other applications. So I've had one boy this year who's got an early decision to Harvard, and so he's withdrawn all his other applications. One's got into Catholic University of America, early decision. He's had to withdraw all his other applications.
So Lizzie, for you now, you're obviously still in college, right? So are you looking particularly at lacrosse? How do you sort of, and I'll ask sort of Sarah and Megan this as well as the teachers in the school type thing is, does a student have to be like, how do you know that you're, to be blunt, how do you know you're good enough to get a scholarship? Because there'll be a lot of kids who you pitch them in assembly, hey, you could go to the USA, you could do this and this, and they go, oh yeah, I'm quite good at basketball, and then you have to turn around to them, Sarah or Megan, or maybe the coach or someone else, and say, well, actually, you're not good enough to get, how does that work?
Pardon?
You start.
Okay. Well, obviously, I know some people who are already in America, like Hannah, who have reassured me that I am good enough.
Yeah.
And I have coaches I can talk to who obviously also know people who they can compare how well I play, compare how they play. So yeah, apart from that, sort of just hoping that I
Yeah.
am.
Can I just ask you a question, Lizzie? What were you and Hannah doing together during the summer holiday?
Oh,
I know
we
it's a
were
rhetorical question. I know the answer, but I'm just interested in you articulating it.
we were both competing for Wales under-20 at the World Championship in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
So,
And I think that gives you a kind of
Right.
insight into how
Yeah.
she knows she's good enough.
Yeah, you've got an idea from that. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I'd like to add to that as a parent and as a teacher that, you know, you were saying earlier about how do young people who may come from a background that isn't supportive, whether that's, you know, familial or educationally, don't have the opportunities that maybe Hannah and Lizzie have had. You know, if the young person is a young person who's involved in a sport to a high level, so whether that is their sort of local club and they're really pushing them, you know, they're a real talent on the football pitch or the hockey pitch or the lacrosse pitch, you know, that's sort of where this sort of germ of a potential for the US comes from. I mean, Hannah, when she was in lockdown in the fifth form, was out in the garden with a lacrosse stick and a wall, you know, on a daily basis, and then recording this and researching it. And she identified that that's what she wanted to do. And there was absolutely no swaying her. I'd never heard of studying in the US. No one in my family had ever considered it. But it was that absolute conviction that that's all she wanted to do. And I think similarly with Lizzie, she's not applying to UK universities. She absolutely knows that's what she wants to do. And I think if the student is additionally, with that dedication and determination, playing at a sort of an elite level, that's when they should really think about it, because the opportunities out there, looking at my daughter's opportunity compared to peers on her lacrosse team who are playing at their local university in the UK, the opportunities are immense and exciting.
Sure. I wanted to ask, and again, Phil, Sarah, Megan on this one. We've talked a lot about the sporting pathway, which is obviously for Hannah and Lizzie. I'm presuming there's an academic pathway. So do you want to tell us a bit more about that? Maybe starting from Phil, I guess, in terms of somebody who is really good about art or something, you know, art or music or even like one of the core academic subjects, maths, English, whatever.
Yeah, the majority of students I work with are pursuing that, shall we say, more straightforward academic program. They're applying to the university. They're looking to major in business or in engineering or in philosophy or whatever it might be. And then they select the universities that have that particular field of expertise. So engineering, for example, are big schools like MIT, Georgia Tech, Caltech, that have a particular specialism for that. If you want to go for classical music, slightly counterintuitively, Vanderbilt at Nashville, Tennessee, big country area, is one of the preeminent classical music universities in the world. So there are universities that have particular specialisms, so students can look at that. So one thing that people don't always understand is you cannot study medicine, law, veterinary science, or dentistry as an undergraduate in an American university. You go to an American university and then you do what Hannah's doing at the moment, is you kind of build a degree and then major in a particular topic, particular area, particular subject specialism. So that's the most normal route, and those students will apply on a common application where they write a personal essay, they put down all their attributes. But if they are interested, one of the girls that I was working with a couple of years ago from Morton Hall is at the moment studying at New York University, the Tisch School of Drama, because she was passionate about drama and acting and that. But what about the girls and boys from Royal Hospital School, Megan?
Yeah, I think our student from last year's highlighted the athlete pathway a bit more than ever. But lots of them are just looking down the academic route. And actually, from kind of advice from Phil, I started with year 11s and year 12, so I've kind of got a much more established program. We all went to the Fulbright conference in September where we start looking at schools, and actually there was a lot of schools or colleges that were ones I'd never heard of. They were all came back really loving Florida Tech, and had really good conversations there, especially some kind of our engineers. And then I'm actually about to go on maternity leave, but they're all registered to take the first SAT test in the March cycle, so they can kind of treat it as maybe the only one they do, but a mock. Again, advice from Phil was that they should start taking them early in year 12, and then they can take them multiple times and actually build on their scores. But I would say it's 50-50, those who are athletes and those who are academics. And again, that's something kind of fills over my eyes too, is that it's not, there are so many universities in the US, they don't all have to do Ivy League, and they can apply to a different, I forget what they're called, but a different league of university, and actually that might give them more chance to kind of get some kind of scholarship, be it merit based. In terms of our athletes, and how I know, because I teach psychology, so I'm not a PE teacher. I have spoken to the PE staff about whether they're good enough. But again, it depends on what kind of school they're applying for, what good enough means, is what I've been led to believe from Phil. I think we've got a year 11 coming through who's probably the first student who's looking at going through the band route. He plays for our school band and our marching band, and actually him going through the marching band route is something that we will look to explore in the next few years, because there's opportunities there that, again, Phil highlighted to me when I met him in September. So
fantastic. I was going to say, Phil, presumably you can sort of you have knowledge on, you know, if somebody's interested in a particular subject or even a particular topic within a subject, you have that knowledge of, right, you know, here's a few colleges in the US that could be interesting.
Yeah, so if a student wants to pursue a particular psychology, for example, there are universities that have a particular expertise in that sort of area. Yeah. So that is helpful. But I think also the other thing which we haven't really we've mentioned financial aid, but the cost base is very different. So, you know, Hannah's university will have a cost base for the fee, which her scholarship contributes towards. But Harvard, Yale will be a cost base considerably different. So Harvard, Yale this year is nearly $90,000 a year.
What does that mean, sorry, in terms of cost base? What's
so that will be their fee structure for the year. So if you go there, you will have to pay a fee of $90,000 per year. However, most students can't afford that, or a lot of students can't, and that's where the scholarship route comes in. So they can pay maybe 50% of that. So Hannah will have got a percentage scholarship for her lacrosse, and then she may get a little bit of merit aid, a little bit of financial need aid, so she can build up reduce that cost base by scholarship, working on the campus as well. Some students do that. But if you go to other universities, their fee level is maybe $12,000 a year. So that's considerably cheaper than the British university. So again, it's a choice. And one of the things that Hannah had to make a choice, and Lizzie will have to, and Sam will have to from Royal Hospital School, is the university that they would like to go to in a place that they want to go to live, studying a subject that they really want to study, but at a cost that their parents or their financiers can live with. And that's where I come in, helping to make that choice between cost, climate, and course, basically. And so there are big options, whereas the British fee is what it is. You know, it's 10,000-ish, irrespective of where you go. Whereas in America, it can be $90,000 down to a community college, 2-year community college, where it's only $5,000.
Yeah, I mean, that sort of circles back to my first question, I guess, which is why, you know, many people out there might, you know, people watching this might be saying, why USA? You know, for example, Sarah, you know, Hannah's gone to the US. You know, I guess someone watching might say, well, I can go to a university in Czech Republic, for example, for free. And I'll get that sort of living abroad experience, if you like, maybe. I think one of the attractions, which I'm sort of getting from this conversation, is on the sporting side, is on the sort of facility side, is on the elite level sports side. on that sort of part, that angle. Maybe that also translates. I mean, obviously, we know that some of the best universities in the world are in America, but I'm just wondering, did you sort of consider that, Sarah, within that mix of, okay, let's say, the sort of statement is, I want to go abroad, right? Is sort of, that might be a starting point for a lot of people. Might say, I want to go abroad. So what made you go down that avenue in particular?
So as I think I've sort of indicated before, I was entirely guided by Hannah. So I had never, ever really considered or thought of universities in America, and a bit like Megan, only heard of the top Ivy Leagues from American movies. So Hannah's decision to go there was entirely motivated by her sport. Lacrosse, the USA is the biggest lacrosse playing nation in the world.
That makes sense.
They lead to such a level that even other nations who are, amazing at lacrosse, such as Canada and Australia and other great nations, really can't catch the USA on a lacrosse pitch. So Hannah had worked out for herself that if her goal was to be the best lacrosse player she could possibly be, the best place to do that was the USA. So I think that was her primary motivator. But when I look now as a parent in terms of what she gets from studying in the USA, as opposed to perhaps studying elsewhere, whether it's the UK or Europe, I definitely think that for her there is the excitement of travel and the opportunities that brings. So she will have competitions not just around her state, but they travel out of state, meeting people, across the USA, the opportunity to see what is an incredible country. And of course, which you get, if you study anywhere abroad, but there's the sort of the cultural immersion, the friendships, really very different way of life. They are incredibly, disarmingly friendly and warm. The amount of people I've made friends with just from sitting on the side of a lacrosse pitch who want to invite you to supper or to visit them for a holiday. I mean, they just are an incredibly warm nation that make you feel very welcome and very at home. And so I think that's something, as a parent, I would never consider this. I think that's a real benefit, and certainly I think.
Sorry, I'm just giggling at like sort of American customer service compared to sort of like British customer service. Hello, it's like Monday morning at 6 a.m. Hello, good morning. What would you like with your coffee? It's like, and then you've got sort of the guy in the burger van on the M6, toll road or whatever. Like, what do you want? What do you want, Tom? Like, burger, you want beans with it?
We're very reserved by comparison. And that's certainly, I think, what Hannah would say was certainly a little bit of a shock at first, but it brings also lots of great opportunities and benefits too. Yeah,
for sure. Okay, I mean, we're coming towards the end of the conversation. I wanted to have a chat specifically with Phil, sort of to finish off about the program you offer, Phil, and sort of the steps through that program and what support you offer, and also maybe an idea on the pricing and how schools can access that. If it's a school, if it's a parent, if it's a student, how does it all fit together with USA Study? What can USA Study offer?
It can often begin with me visiting a school, as I did at Morton Hall, visiting one of their higher education fairs, or visiting, doing a presentation in assembly. And then once it's stimulated interest from the students or the school, is then following that up with a Zoom consultation, talking to them about the opportunities, the options, and the pitfalls and the drawbacks. And then if they decide they want to pursue it further, we can then put in together a kind of a timeline for the students so they can have a look at the different colleges, the different options, the different finances. And then we put together a program looking towards the application process, the standardized testing, which I always recommend now. It will come back more and more. Pandemic meant it wasn't possible, so Hannah couldn't have done standardized testing when she was Lizzie's age, but now it will become more prevalent, I think. Helping them through that application process with their common application, their essay writing, the requirements from the school, their transcripts, any support that people like Megan and Sarah give to the students, written recommendations, and then submitting the application, and then following that on with, as I was helping Sam this weekend with his interview for Princeton, helping him with that process. And then the following on from that, those that are then offered and decide to go, getting ready to get simple thing like a visa, which is, it's still, you've got to get an offer from a university. They will then let you know that they're going to offer you that place, and then you can apply for the visa. And that preparation for departure, which is hopefully where we'll be with Lizzie in a year's time, helping her with her visa application and her packing her bags ready to go.
It's pretty exciting. Yeah, I mean, the departure preparation, how do you support with that bit?
To give them help with the visa application, but also in terms of, as Hannah will know better than I do, definitely, but you have to choose your courses, and usually have to do that before the university term starts. So often preparation for course selection, because of this liberal arts degree, this kind of pick and mix approach to it, you've got to get in quickly with the right courses, make sure you've got accommodation, meal plans, and make sure that, but Hannah might answer that. How did you do that, Hannah?
Yeah, I mean, it is quite a process, but you do want to get in with your classes early, otherwise the spots there's only a certain number of spots in each class. But these are all the things that you definitely want your class schedule. That's really key. I had a few issues with immigration yesterday coming in, and my class schedule was really important for that, and because I was able to give them my class schedule, that really helped me out. So things like that, being able to prove you're a student, I know it's a bit different to what we're kind of talking about, but it's really key actually what Phil does with helping you pick your classes and stuff, because that actually adds into your visa requirements, especially if you have any issues.
Got you absolutely. And presumably you're also, Phil, sort of touching base through that 6-month period or whatever it is with the teacher, the student, the parents. You're sort of in
try to be available. I think hopefully if you asked any of my students or the teachers that I've worked with, will say that we are available and we do respond quickly to questions. And one of the things I did at Megan's school, which I'd like to do more, was to go and do some professional development. So Megan was very keen to learn more, which is how I met Megan. She was very pleased wanted to learn more about it, and so I went and spent a day down there with Megan and some of the students from Royal Hospital School and a parent to give them some insight into it, because it is important that the school at least has some background knowledge, so they may be able to, as Sarah and the team at Morton Hall can, and Megan certainly now can give objective advice. But at the end of the day, it may be a bit like I don't know, but I know a man who does. And that's where I come in. And I don't know everything about everywhere, but I know where to find it. And so I think the conversations with parents, with students, with teachers, making sure that they're making informed decisions and helping them navigate the process, which, as I say, can be. And as Hannah said, you're very much at the behest of that person behind the immigration desk at Logan Airport in Boston or in Raleigh, North Carolina, where I'm sure Hannah went into. If she says no, then you are stuck. So you've got to make sure that you've got everything in the right place, and you've got all the information you need to convince that person that you are an eligible student.
Brilliant. Well, listen, we've covered, I think, as much as we can in the time that we've had. It's been a fantastic conversation. I've learned a huge amount actually from everybody. So that's been so interesting just to hear about people who embark on these pathways and the way they do it, what they need to do. I'm going to ask 2 final questions, short questions. One is to Hannah, and my question to Hannah is: what would you say to a student who is sort of a student or a teacher actually, who is thinking about going and studying in the USA? What would be your message to them?
Well, I'd probably just say, because I think a lot of people question it, just do it. There's no harm in doing it. The worst thing someone's going to say to you is no, and I don't know, 40,000 other universities that you can talk to. Like with lacrosse, in each division there's like 200 universities. That's like so many schools that you can go and talk to, all of different levels. Like there are some schools that I'd never go to because they're too good, but also some schools that I'd never go to because they're not any good at all. So I mean, just go for it, and then you can pull out. It is a process that I actually don't think is too difficult to pull out of. You can never really, unless you commit to something, you can never really get too deep into it. So you may as well just do it and apply and see what happens.
That makes perfect sense. And Phil, you get the final word, which is what should somebody do if they want to get in touch with you and find out a bit more about what we've been talking about today?
The best way is to go onto the usastudy.co.uk website. There is a contact form there. Just fill that in, and I promise you I'll get back to you within 24 hours and offer you that opportunity to have a consultation and a no strings attached discussion. So that would be the best way of doing it, I think.
Perfect. So final word from me is just to say thank you to everybody who's joined us live. We've had over 500 live listeners in the show and watchers, viewers. So thank you very much for sort of joining us on TTR. It's a busy day, I'm sure, for people out there. Busy Monday, so thanks for checking in. Obviously, this will be available if you've just joined us for the last 5 minutes or whatever it may be. This will be available to listen back to as a podcast via Teachers Talk Radio on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the other avenues, and it'll also be on YouTube as well as soon as we finish. So if anybody wants to listen or watch, please like and subscribe, of course, on YouTube, share on the show if there's been something in here of interest, or perhaps you know somebody who might be interested in applying for study in the USA. Make sure you forward it on so they can get that information and that support. Teachers out there, of course, if you have students, mention it to them tomorrow and say, hey, maybe this is something you might want to consider for next year or in the future. Thank you, everybody, for joining us live. And I think at that point, we can all just wave and say bye-bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Outstanding, a world-class vision, a world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.